What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ravi Wadden, and in today's video, I want to talk about what I think is a pretty good lease deal on a Rivian R1T. So if you're in the market for a Rivian R1T, I think you'll get a lot of value from this video. We'll talk about why, I'll talk about why I think leasing is the better way to go rather than financing this particular truck. So what we'll do in this video is we'll go to Rivian's website, we'll talk about this lease deal in detail, we'll talk about the mileage, we'll talk about the buyout option, we'll talk about everything you need to know, and I'll give you lots of little helpful tips and tricks along the way. And then in the second part of this video, what we'll do is we'll run my 1.25% rule of leasing on this Rivian to show you, and I want to show you why, I think this Rivian is a good lease deal in terms of value. And then at the end of this video, or in the third part of this video, we'll compare the finance monthly payments to the lease monthly payments. And that way you'll see for yourself why leasing this particular Rivian R1T is a good or a better financial decision. So if that sounds good to you, please be sure to like this video and please be sure to follow and subscribe. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the computer behind me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are on Rivian's website. As you can see, it says now leasing available configuration starting at $651 a month. Let's go ahead and click on shop. And if we scroll down here, you'll see that this R1T is the cheapest R1T that they have available. And it's actually cheaper monthly payment than was stated on the previous page. As you can see here, it's a dual standard 2025 Rivian R1T. The MSRP is $70,100 and the estimated lease payment is $638 a month. So if we go ahead and click this, you'll see all of the options that this particular Rivian has and what all it has that makes the price $70,100. But what we'll do here is we'll click on the calculator right here because this is where we're going to get a the bulk of our information. Now, in terms of state, I'm going to use Washington because I am based in Seattle. Now, what you're going to see here with Rivian is you have different options. You can do a 24-month lease or you can do a 36-month lease. As you can see, the 24-month lease is $623 a month, and the 36-month lease is $638 a month. Now, what you're also going to see is that you have an annual mileage allowance. So it defaults to 10,000 miles a year. So it's assuming that you're going to drive 10,000 miles a year. And you can also do 12 or 15,000 miles a year. And if you do 12,000 miles a year, the payment jumps up to $656 a month. And at 15,000 miles a year, the payment jumps up to $691 a month. Now, let's go ahead and just leave that at 10,000 miles a year. And it's assuming that you have excellent credit of 740 or higher. And let's just backtrack here. So with this annual mileage, it's really, really important anytime you lease a vehicle that if you know you're going to drive more than 10,000 miles a year, just get the 12,000 miles a year up front or the 15,000 mile a year lease up front. Because what's going to happen is if you drive 10,000 miles a year, or if you get a 10,000 mile a year lease and then you drive 12,000 miles a year, that means you'd have about 6,000 miles in excess mileage that you'd have to pay a penalty on. And as you can see here with Rivian, you'd have to pay 30 cents a mile, which is really, really expensive. So just getting that 2,000 miles a year up front will be much cheaper than having to pay the excess mileage penalty of 30 cents a mile. Now, you also see that it defaults to a $7,000 down payment. And when you take this $7,000 down payment and add in the acquisition fee and the first month's payment, you got an estimated due at signing amount of $8,533. Now, a couple of things that I want to mention here is that this $7,000 is a capitalized cost reduction. So all you're doing is putting this towards the lease to lower the monthly payment. It's not really, all you're doing is prepaying the lease deal. So in terms of this capitalized cost reduction, and as you can see here, it says the $7,000 capitalized cost reduction. All you're doing is prepaying the lease. There's no financial advantage of putting the $7,000 down. So all I want to say is that you should probably try to put the least amount of money down as possible. The second thing that I want to mention here is that the estimated due at signing of $8,533 is excluding taxes and fees. So this car qualifies for the $7,500 EV lease credit, as you can see here. So in the state of Washington, you have to pay taxes on that. That's about $750, give or take, right? And then you're going to have to pay additional license and registration, which would probably be, about another $1,000. And then let's just say you have some additional dealer fees. So you're probably looking at least $2,000 to $2,500 on top of this $8,533. Now, for purposes of this video, we'll just go with $2,000. But just please note that depending on where you live, it could be slightly more than $2,000 or slightly less than $2,000. I would say that in the state of Washington, our registration fees and tax rates are typically higher than the rest of the country. So, for most of you, it's going to be less than $2,000. Now, you'll also see here, if we read the fine print, you have a disposition fee. I'm just trying to find where I read the disposition fee just a second ago. A disposition fee of $495. Now, you'd only pay this disposition fee if you were to turn this lease in. Now, if you bought this lease before the lease ended, or if you bought this truck at the end of the lease term, you would not have to pay this disposition fee. But the important thing here, to determine whether or not you should buy this particular truck at the end of the lease term, is to really understand, like, hey, are you way over the mileage? If you were to turn the truck in, would you have to pay, a lot of money in excess mileage penalties? And if you were to buy it, does it just offset that cost? And is it cheaper to just buy it? You'd also want to see what the market value for this truck is. And if the value is higher than the buyout amount, it typically makes sense to either buy the truck or realize that positive equity in other ways, right? So you could trade this truck in for another car, or you could sell this car before the lease ends and have the dealer cut you a check. So in the next part of the video, what I want to do now is run my 1.25% rule of leasing. Now, with my 1.25% rule of leasing, if you get a number under 1.5%, that's typically a good lease deal. If you get a number under 1.25%, that's a great lease deal. And if you get a number under 1%, that's an amazing lease deal. And there are some amazing lease deals out there, but this Rivian isn't really an amazing lease deal. So what we'll do is we'll take the estimated due at signing of $8,533, and we'll actually just add the $2,000 to this amount. So we have a total due at signing of $10,533. I think that's a pretty conservative estimate. And like I said, for most of you, it'll be less than $2,000 in taxes and fees. And then we'll subtract the monthly payment of $638 from that amount, since that's included in the due at signing amount, and that gives you $9,895. Now what we'll do is we'll divide this by 36, since this is a 36-month lease, and you get $274. Now if we add the monthly payment of $638 back in, you get a monthly pre-tax payment, assuming $0 down, so all of your taxes and fees rolled in, of $912. But remember, in most states, I'd say 90% of states, you have to pay taxes or sales tax on the payment. Now here where I live, it's 10%, so I'll multiply this by 1.1 to account for 10% sales tax. And that gives me an effective monthly payment with $0 down, assuming all your taxes, fees, everything is rolled in, of a little over $1,000. And if I were to divide this by this vehicle's MSRP, which is $70,100, so $70,100, I get 1.0143. I'll multiply this by 100 to turn this into a percentage and move the decimal point over 2 spots. And I get 1.43%. Now, remember when I said that anything under 1.5% is a good deal? Well, this is a good deal, sitting at 1.43%. Now, if you did 12,000 miles a year, you might be, approaching that 1.5%. But, under 1.25% is a great deal. Under 1% is an amazing deal. So at 1.43%, I think this Rivian is a good deal, especially because if you were to buy this truck, you wouldn't get the $7,500 EV tax credit. You wouldn't get the full $7,500 EV tax credit. And if you were to buy this particular truck, you'd also have to consider your household income, because if you're over a certain threshold, you wouldn't get the $7,500 tax credit. So when you lease it, you get the tax credit, It's a sub 1.5% lease deal. Like, would I like to see it lower than 1.43%? Yes. Do I think it's the best lease deal on a truck in the market? No. But if you're dead set on getting a Rivian R1T, particularly this trim, in my personal opinion, what I would do is I would lease it instead of finance it. Now, if we look at the monthly finance payments, now if you remember the effective monthly payment with $0 down and all taxes and fees rolled in, the effective lease payment was $1,004 a month. Now, if we were to finance this truck, we've got $10,000 down, which is 14%, an APR of 6.99%, 72-month term, Washington registration. You can see that the monthly payment is $1,151, which is roughly $150 more than if you were to lease it, right? And so that's why I think leasing is still the better option. You're saving about $150 a month. And if you annualize that, that's nearly $2,000 a year and $6,000 over the 36 months. And another thing that I want you guys to think about is depreciation. So with Rivians and all electric vehicles for that matter, depreciation hasn't been kind to the EV market. And one of the things that I think is overlooked with leasing electric vehicles is that you know what your depreciation is going to be, right? So you're kind of taking the depreciation risk off the table. You know what you're going to pay, monthly payments, and at the end of the lease term, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have negative equity. Because what's happening with a lot of people that are buying EVs and just paying cash for them, they're not getting the $7,500 EV tax credit. And then the market is changing, right? The Rivian battery packs are changing every single year. They're getting better and better. The cars are also getting cheaper and cheaper to build, and that's putting more downward pressure on the used car market. So the last thing that I would want for any of you watching is to be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 upside down in 3 years. And that's why I think leasing this car is the better way to go. And if it makes sense to buy the car at the end of 3 years, let's just say that the Rivian held its value extremely well, then you have a buyout option, and then you can consider buying this vehicle and keeping it for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever. So that's one of the big misconceptions with leasing, is that you can't buy the car, and you can buy the car. So now you just have an option, and you have the option to buy it, and you protect yourself from depreciation. You get the full $7,500 EV tax credit, and that's why I personally think leasing this R1T makes a lot of financial sense. But if you guys have any other questions about leasing, if you have any other questions about DriveMatch.com, which is a website that I co-founded where you can get pre-negotiated lease deals, or if you have any other questions about this R1T, let me know in the comment section below and I will get back to you. And with that, I'm going to call it a video. Thank you all for watching. Financial knowledge is power. Please like and follow for more.